With the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics just weeks away, one can't help but wonder if this is a setup for one of the largest false flag terrorist attacks in the history of the world. With increased rhetoric from the West and intensifying mainstream media attention, the U.S. State Department issued a dire warning late last week about the possibility of a terrorist attack during the Sochi Olympic Games.
All right, we're going to travel now for a travel alert for Americans planning to attend the Sochi Winter Olympics in Russia next month. There's been growing concern that terrorists could strike during the Games after several recent attacks around the country. ABC's Kirit Radia is in Moscow with details of the new U.S. State Department warning. Kirit, how worried should Americans be this morning?
Good morning, Bianna. No specific threat to Americans, but after this latest string of indiscriminate attacks across the region, fears are growing that the Olympics are the next target. For Americans headed to the Olympics next month, a new warning from the State Department: be on the lookout for terrorism. In a travel alert issued Friday, the State Department urges Americans to be vigilant, especially on public transportation. The warning says there's no sign that Americans are being targeted, but it follows several attacks near Sochi. In October, a suicide bomber detonates aboard a bus in nearby Volgograd. 7 are killed. 2 weeks ago, 2 more bombings in the same city, hitting a train station and another bus, killing dozens more.
In the travel alert, the department warned that Americans should be vigilant about their surroundings and take common sense precautions to stay safe, notably on public transport. In recent weeks, several terror attacks have struck Russia, namely in the Russian city of Volgograd. 2 separate bus explosions, as well as an attack on a train station, left mangled bodies on the street and has raised fears of more violence in anticipation of the event. It is important to note that the United States has been engaged in a dangerous propaganda war with Russia for much of the last year, after revelations from truth-teller Edward Snowden shocked millions of Americans. The leak, which some have called the most significant disclosures in U.S. history, has put American intelligence in Washington on the defensive.
Talk a little bit about how the American surveillance state actually functions. Does it target the actions of Americans?
NSA and the intelligence community in general is focused on getting intelligence wherever it can, by any means possible, that it believes on the grounds of sort of a self-certification that they serve the national interest. Originally, we saw that focus very narrowly tailored as foreign intelligence gathered overseas. Now, increasingly, we see that it's happening domestically. And to do that, the NSA specifically targets the communications of everyone. It ingests them by default. It collects them in its system, and it filters them, and it analyzes them, and it measures them, and it stores them for periods of time, simply because that's the easiest, most efficient, and most valuable way to achieve these ends. So while they may be intending to target someone associated with a foreign government or someone that they suspect of terrorism, they're collecting your communications to do so. Any analyst at any time can target anyone, any selector anywhere. Where those communications will be picked up depends on the range of the sensor networks and the authorities that that analyst is empowered with. Not all analysts have the ability to target everything, but I, sitting at my desk, certainly had the authorities to wiretap anyone, from you or your accountant to a federal judge to even the president if I had a personal email.
Would an enraged Washington have something to gain by staging a series of terror attacks on Russian soil? Vladimir Putin, largely responsible for the safety of Snowden after meeting his asylum request late last year, has been the focus of intense media scrutiny and White House disapproval. In recent months, the Obama administration has called Snowden's asylum grant a disappointing decision and has labeled Snowden a terrorist. A state spokesman for Russia's main investigative agency has confirmed the recent attacks in Volgograd are linked. Although there has been no immediate claim of responsibility, U.S. representatives have pointed a finger at leaders of an insurgency group that aimed to create an Islamic State out of Muslim provinces in Russia. Doku Umarov, what the mainstream media has dubbed Russia's Osama bin Laden, has specifically been mentioned. According to reports, the Chechen Islamist militant has claimed responsibility for several attacks on Russian civilians in recent years, including the 2010 Moscow metro bombings and the 2011 international airport attack. Even more interesting is a recent claim by the Washington Times that suggests Umarov may also be linked to the Boston bombings that occurred in America on April 15th, early last year. Intensely controversial, many believe the Boston bombings were an orchestrated false flag terrorist attack by the United States government, motivated by impregnating fear in the American people as a way to justify a massive surveillance program exposed by Edward Snowden, his only compounded suspicion. Some suggest the Boston bombings were a dry run for testing martial law in a major U.S. city. Although U.S. intelligence officials blame Umarov for inspiring the attacks in both Volgograd and Boston, many find it difficult to believe a government actively engaged in the anti-constitutional wiretapping of millions of Americans without their consent. Reports in recent months have also indicated that it was the U.S. government that had been arming al-Qaeda militants in Syria, responsible for the deadly chemical attacks in Ghouta that killed innocent civilians and threatened to destabilize the government of Bashar al-Assad. Are we to trust a government engaged in the wiretapping of America and the propagation of a massive surveillance state targeting its own citizens? With the Sochi Olympics fast approaching and growing speculation of an attack by the mainstream media and the U.S. State Department, we have to ask the question no one else dares to. What would the U.S. government have to gain by a series of pre-planned false flag terrorist attacks in Sochi this winter at the 2014 Olympic Games?